Tonight, many of America's farmers already feeling the pinch are worried about the possibility of more challenges.
American farms are on the decline. There was a 7% drop in farms.
If I hired Americans to do the work, I would have to pay probably about $100,000 a year per person, and they would only work 40, 50 hours a week. I would be out of business within 6 months. I couldn't afford it. If the price of milk was, or like a gallon of milk cost $10 in the store, then I could probably do that.
This is not just a trade story anymore. This is a rural economic crisis. The fields stretch endlessly across America's heartland, golden with promise and heavy with uncertainty. In April 2025, the current administration imposed tariffs exceeding all previous levels, triggering immediate and devastating retaliation from China and global allies. They planted the fields, they worked the land, they waited for rain, but when harvest came, there were no buyers. Because somewhere between Washington and Beijing, the lifeline that once kept American farms alive was severed. What began as a policy move targeting Chinese goods has morphed into an existential threat for thousands of family farms. The National Farmers Union president Rob LaRue issued a stark warning just days ago. Family farmers will bear the brunt of this global trade war. His words hang in the air like storm clouds over fallow fields, accurate predictions of impending disaster that few in Washington seem willing to heed. Did the administration underestimate the global ripple effects of these tariffs? The evidence suggests they did. Soybean exports to China dropped 75% in 2019 and have never recovered, with Brazil capturing the majority share. What was once temporary has calcified into permanent market loss. And now, as new tariffs pile onto old wounds, American farmers find themselves asking a devastating question. Is anyone in Washington listening? We do not want bailouts, we want trade deals, one Nebraska farmer told reporters last week.
Fertilizer, fuel, herbicides, machinery, all have gone up.
His voice cracking with the weight of generations of agricultural heritage hanging in the balance. His hands, worn from decades of labor, now clutch empty export contracts instead of profits. The numbers tell a story more devastating than any political speech could convey. Exports of U.S. sorghum to China plummeted by 95% in the first 2 months of this year, a vertical drop from 1,400,000 metric tons to just 78,000 in the same period. That is not a decline. That is annihilation. Across America's grain belt, silos stand full, while bank accounts run empty.
Stocks piled up, prices dropped, and Iowa's farmers have been caught in the crosshairs.
China's retaliatory tariffs now exceed 125% on most American agricultural imports, a direct response to the administration's new measures implemented in March. These are not just statistics, they represent livelihoods hanging by increasingly frayed threads. The American Farm Bureau Federation didn't mince words in their assessment last week. Tariffs threaten the economic sustainability of farmers across the nation. Their warning flashes like a breaking news ticker while farmers watch their markets disappear overnight.
Politicians in general love to use a problem to get votes. So I like him trying to solve problems, check the boxes, move on.
How do farmers survive when a primary export market disappears overnight? Many won't. For every percentage point those tariffs rise, another family farm edges closer to foreclosure. The shock of seeing once lucrative export channels dry up has turned initial optimism into paralyzing anxiety. Where can these farmers turn when nearly every major outlet is blocked? It took decades for America to build its agricultural dominance. It has taken less than 1 year to dismantle it. As American silos stand full, Brazilian trucks load soybeans bound for Chinese ports. Brazilian farmers celebrate new long-term contracts with China, contracts that once belonged to American producers. This is an opportunity in disguise, one Brazilian agricultural minister remarked, barely concealing his satisfaction at capturing market share that took the United States generations to build. Meanwhile, the European Union is finalizing 25% tariffs on American soybeans, processed pork, peanuts, almonds, and more. Measures they frame as defensive against U.S. protectionism. These tariffs, pending EU approval and set to implement by June 2025, represent another domino falling on U.S. exports. Each announcement lands like a body blow to America's agricultural communities. Why target farmers? Because they are politically sensitive, they have been loyal, they are vulnerable. The calculated precision of these retaliatory measures reveals a sobering truth. America's trading partners understand exactly where to apply maximum pressure. Brazil, Argentina, and Russia aren't just temporarily filling gaps. They're signing long-term deals with China and the EU to provide soy, meat, and wheat. Trade routes that took decades to establish are being permanently redrawn on the global map. Can the US ever regain these markets once they have turned elsewhere? History suggests the answer is no.
If you're a business, you are not going to put in a multi-billion-dollar investment in the United States if you don't know what your cost of goods are going to be. And we still don't have that clarity. So the tariffs on China, today we have the Treasury Secretary saying they'll come down. We still have this 90-day pause on
The cruel irony unfolds in farm country daily. Tariffs meant to protect American industries are instead crushing American farmers. Higher prices on fertilizer, machinery, seed, and feed due to reciprocal tariffs on imports like steel and aluminum have created a perfect storm of rising costs and plummeting revenues. Farmers across the country are discovering that the tariffs they thought would hurt foreign exporters are instead landing right in their own laps. During the last trade war, the US government paid more than $23 billion in farm bailouts between 2018 and 2019. Now, the White House is considering another multi-billion-dollar relief package, a stack of bailout checks that cannot possibly offset the mountain of unpaid bills piling up on kitchen tables across rural America. Farmers do not want checks, they want customers. This simple truth encapsulates the frustration rippling through agricultural communities. The administration's Band-Aid solutions do nothing to address the crumbling global market structure. Each subsidy payment represents not relief, but reduction, the transformation of proud producers into government dependence. If farmers can't afford to produce, who will feed America? This question looms larger with each passing day as input costs soar and profit margins vanish. The heightening frustration is palpable. Livelihoods reduced to government subsidies while long-term solutions remain elusive. Grassroots organizations, trade associations, and local banks are raising alarms about what economists now openly call an impending farm crisis. The National Farmers Union supports legislation requiring congressional approval for broad tariffs due to the severe damage already inflicted on agriculture. Their stance represents growing rural dissent, challenging the administration's narrative. Bailouts cannot replace stable trade relationships, warned a panel of economists in a report released this week. This isn't merely an academic observation, it's a final warning before we reach a crisis point from which recovery may be impossible. The statistics paint a grim picture. The United States has lost more than 20% of its global agricultural market share since 2018. This isn't a temporary setback. It's a fundamental restructuring of global trade, with America increasingly on the outside looking in. New trade routes are solidifying as other countries step in to supply global demands previously met by the US. Multi-generational farms now face foreclosure or closure, taking with them not just economic activity, but the cultural fabric of rural communities. The fear that America's rural economy may never bounce back to pre-trade war levels isn't paranoia. It's a rational assessment based on rapidly changing global supply chains. How much longer can these communities survive without decisive policy changes? Will Washington listen before it's too late? The clock is ticking, and with each passing day, America's agricultural dominance, built over generations, continues to erode under the weight of a trade war that was supposed to help, not harm, the very people who feed this nation.